Hello, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started by introducing ourselves. I'm Jen Bonwell. I teach primary and third floor, school day primary, and it is it's my 11th year at Greentown and my 7th year in the primary room. And I'm Olivia Powers. I lead the Montessori Me play groups here at Greentown. This is my 4th year at Greentown. I was in the toddler all-day Montessori program prior, and then before Greentown, I was in primary in the public Montessori schools in Charleston, South Carolina. We are excited to talk about play and the importance of play in childhood. So young children develop important skills through the power of play. They learn language, foster creativity, and develop what is now called power skills. We used to know them as soft skills, but it turns out these are very critical skills to work and interact with others. Play also aids in your child nurturing their imagination and gives them a sense of adventure. Before we dive in, Mildred Parton was an American sociologist who developed the social theory of the 6 stages of child's play. And much like Maria Montessori, she developed this through observation, specifically preschool age children during times of free play. She would observe them during spontaneous play by the 1-minute sampling method. Playing house was the most social type of play engaged in by the children, with sand play and constructive work with art materials that were characteristically parallel play activities, and I will explain more in a few. These stages are general guidelines for what to expect of your child's play skills, but remember, every child is different. We always give age ranges so that it's not, oh, my child's this age and they're not doing this. We give a wide range of, I don't even like to use the word normal. What is normal? Starting with unoccupied play, this most commonly occurs from birth to about 3 months. The baby is moving their legs, arms, hands, other parts of their body randomly to begin to develop more self-control. This stage of play lacks social interaction, objectives, and language. Children engaged in this type of play are observing their world, moving their bodies, much like an infant who's laying down watching a ceiling fan while they're kicking their legs, or during tummy time, they're maybe looking at a mirror or looking around at their environment. And then this is a picture from our Montessori and Me classroom. So they're not socializing so much as they're all at a mirror where they can kind of start to see, oh, this is what I look like, and then of course reflections of adults and other children to be able to observe and see their environment. But at this age, it's not building friendships, socializing, that typical play that I think many of us are more familiar with. And then we have solitary play. This is another stage that begins in infancy and continues until about age 2. Children are starting to play on their own, but they're still not noticing other children around. Young children are still in this egotistical mindset. It's their world and no one else exists. So during this stage of development, we're helping children to master new personal skills like cognitive and motor skills, which will prepare them for playing with others. So typically you'll observe children playing with toys differently from others as they're continuing to explore their world and how it works. Solitary play is more focused and sustained than the previous unoccupied play. So picture a child happily driving a toy car across the floor, or in our Montessori classrooms, a child who is independently working from one activity to the next. And then parallel play. This is kind of the very beginnings of more socialized interactions. Children are still engaging in activities independently, but they're oftentimes working side by side with another child with the same materials. They may observe and mimic each other, but they still have their own goals, and communication is very limited. So you can picture children that are seated across from each other, busy building their own Lego creations or train tracks, but they haven't quite started sharing and giving each other commentary and rules of, oh, put this here, that type of. And then this is kind of the crossover associative play, and Jen and I were discussing this when we were putting together how unique this play is, because we will start to see it in toddler, specifically in the all-day Montessori classroom where children are turning 3 by the summer, and we start to see more of this engaged, socialized play, where they have different ideas and goals, but they're using the same equipment and the same toys. So it's interesting, this transition from toddler to primary, where the child was the oldest in the room, they were the mentors in the toddler environment, to now transitioning to be the youngest child in the primary classroom. So it's just an interesting observation of Montessori classrooms being mixed age, is an interesting dynamic versus a classroom of same age children. This is not necessarily a right or wrong, this is just an observation that we were discussing together.
Yeah,
Of your observations.
We were thinking about it, and I was saying that for the most part, the majority of the time, when the child comes to the primary room, and it's their first year friend, and they're 3, even if they were kind of very independent in the toddler house, that transition, now with the youngest again, it kind of, they gravitate now more towards the teacher, than being social with the other children, just to kind of get, all right, I'm in a new environment, let me make sure that I got the lay of the land, let me stay with the adult, make sure that they can help me do that. And then, sometimes we have a really social 3-year-old that'll just come in and do all the things and won't need much help. But for the most part, because they're the youngest guy in the room now, they're not the oldest person as they were in the toddler house, and they're, it's a brand new space. And then I see that kind of transferring over to the play deck. I see a lot of the first year friends kind of standing next to the teacher a little bit, maybe drawing with chalk on the ground, or they want to talk or sing a song, or like, you play with me, rather than, once they get a little bit more comfortable and a little older in the primary classroom, they're often running with their friends and doing all those games, and they don't need to stay too close to the adult, for the most part, which is interesting. But like Olivia said, what is the norm? What you can, whenever you read any of these stages and goals and milestones, you have to remember that all children develop at different rates, at different ages. There's early bloomers, there's late bloomers, there's ones in between, and then, it also depends on the child's mood and, what's happening at home and how they're feeling physically, and all of that factors in as well.
So this kind of goes right into the more socialized part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So cooperative play in the Montessori classroom, the teachers work really hard on giving the children the tools to play together successfully. So that's where our model of peace education comes in. We try to empower them with using their words and letting their friend know if something happens that they don't like. In the beginning, when they first get to know this school and this environment, they're a new child here, they might start out by coming to the teacher and say, Adam pushed me, or I did, they told me I couldn't play. I don't, can you help me? So we will help them give a message. Let me help you give a message. Let them know what you didn't like, and then they will do that with our help, and then eventually they'll be able to give that message on on their own, and then the other child will know that that is coming, right? So we prepare for both sides of that interaction, whereas, like, okay, if you're playing on the play deck, and you bump someone, stop for a moment, are you okay? You know, it was an accident, you know, so then that heads off any feelings of they pushed me on purpose or hurt feelings. And so we give them those tools. And then we also give them the tools like, hands on your own body. We don't allow the roughhousing here. Which is something that children do at home, and I think there is a natural need for it, but at school it's just impossible to stop it from becoming, it's impossible to stop play fighting from becoming real fighting most of the time. So, and there's so many children here, and there's so many social dynamics, and then you're not in your home space with just your siblings. That's just something they learn that they don't do here, but possibly at home, So then when we give them the message, hands on your own body, they know that, okay, I'm not supposed to push my friends, or I'm not supposed to stick my fingers in their ears, they're not gonna like that. And if they do it, we'll ask that friend to give a message. I don't like, you put your fingers in my ears or whatever.
The crazy things we find ourselves saying.
And the nice thing about this is it gives the child an opportunity to make mistakes and know that, okay, I'm not a bad person. They just didn't like that. Okay, I won't do it again. Not a big deal. And so they're learning to be social in a way that they can take maybe to the playground in their neighborhood. And don't expect tremendous results with that, because that child at the neighborhood playground isn't going to Greentown Montessori. They're not learning the same tools, but they can still practice them there. Does that make sense? And then sharing. Last year when Miss Olivia and I, yeah, we can. I think you have your good. When Miss Olivia and I gave this talk last year, parents had a lot of questions about sharing at home between siblings. I don't know how many of you have more than one at home, but there can be some tears or some arguing at home if one sibling wants the toy and another sibling wants to play with it, and they don't want to play at the same time, and the one sibling is really busy with that and doesn't want to give it up, and then you as mom and dad or the caregiver has to intervene. And Maria Montessori, who is the brain genius of our pedagogy here, she wanted concentration to be number one in the classroom, and she wanted all the works to be special. So that's why we have one each. And the child is learning that they're not to walk over to that friend who's using that material and say, I want to use it. When are you going to be finished? I want my turn. Because they learn that child can work on that as long as they want, and we're not to interrupt. We will have our turn. When Adam's all done, it will be your turn. And I know that's a term that a lot of the toddler classrooms use as well, and it seems to work pretty well, because then there's this, but you have to follow through, like when this person's done, that work will be on the shelf later on. It's not going to go back in the closet. There will be an opportunity later on to work on it. So yes, so we're not necessarily sharing in that way. We're waiting for our turn, if that makes any sense. But there are works in the classroom where are group works. Two or more friends can work on something, and then that's another opportunity for this cooperative play. The tools that they've learned in their cooperative play to take place in this group work. Maybe it's a kindergarten friend giving a lesson to a younger friend. So they're sharing the materials at that moment in time. They're working together. Or maybe they're playing an I Spy work, where maybe 4 children are sitting with the teacher, and the teacher is guiding, I spy with my little eye something that begins with A, and they each get a turn to figure out which one of these little objects in front of them begins with A, So they're taking turns and they're sharing in a way that's kind of guided. Does that make any sense? Okay. And once again, it's easier to do these things at school than it is at home. So always give yourself, if you try something like this, always give yourself some some leeway to figure it out and take a while, make mistakes. And you can always say, well, how do you do this in the classroom? How do you work together in the classroom?
Can I piggyback?
Yeah.
Just a note for sharing, I think sometimes we're quick to guide the child to, ask if you can play or use it with the expectation that the other child's gonna say, yes, please. And I think there's a lot of power in using the word no as a child too, of navigating I don't always have to say yes to this person, I can also say no. And that's true for all aspects of life. You want your child to be able to stand up for themselves, say no. And so there are moments where you kind of have to prep the child of, you can always ask, but that child can also say yes or no. And you have to be respectful of their answer. So when a child says no, especially with the younger children, there are a lot of big feelings. And so then it's reminding them of, no, they're still doing it. They'd like to do this work on their own and guiding them to something else on the play deck, the movement room, not necessarily just working in the classroom. We're talking about toys and other activities happening as well. So keep that in mind as well.
I don't know if you want to wait till the end for questions, but
That's
I have
fine.
a question about, it's in a way it's sharing, but it's more about deferential children. We have a very deferential child who's happy to share in the sense
Right.
that if somebody comes up to the steering wheel when he's playing at the play deck, in the playground, he'll be the first to step away before the kids even ask him, obviously somebody else wants to use this, so I'm going to step away. It seems to me also to be a teachable moment, but I'm not sure how you approach that, because getting a child like just stay with it.
Yeah, hold their ground.
You don't have to give up before you're even asked. How do you see that in the classroom? How do you deal with that in the classroom?
And I think this kind of goes off of what Jim was saying earlier. It is a little bit easier here because these children are learning the same skills and hearing the same language used, whereas at the playground, you don't know the conversations that are happening at home with this other child who's coming up. So yes, it's a teachable moment with your child of, you can continue playing with it. And that could even be you stepping in and modeling for the other child, let's ask first. And I think with young children, it's a lot of the adults modeling because they don't have the language yet to navigate that situation.
So the question more about in this case, how do you guide the deferential child? The one that's not, it doesn't have to be a bully child that's coming into grab something. Just approach it, and you want to say, no, it's okay. You can stick with your activity. You know,
Well, I think maybe asking them leading questions or do you feel finished with that? I see. And
that's good.
Would you like to
and
continue
recognizing
playing?
what they're doing, I see you're going to offer it to this child. Do you feel finished, or do you want to keep going?
You can also sort of say, it's your turn right now. It's also possible that they're excited that now they get to interact with someone. Ooh, come on over, let me see what you do. You know, it's their way of inviting them into the play. I don't know.
Because they all use things differently, and differently than how we would use something too.
Yeah.
This was from Jen's classroom.
Yeah, these were first year friends.
My turn. My turn. My turn. No, I have to hold it. No. No, we're doing a different game here. Okay. Can you try? No, you want to play? No, I'm trying. Yeah, I want to do. So you only put the basket for my eyes. Hey, look at push it. Over here. Hey, here. Well, that's not drop them. Let's see that. I don't say that. Okay, Sam. You get to roll the ball after us. Like what? Okay, so first we're gonna have Sam versus You'll go, Sam. Yeah. Now you get to pick it up. Can you get back to me? Whoa! Right next to me. This time I'm like,
Alright, so correction. The guy over here with the Phillies jersey was a second year, and so was the friend with the white shirt and stripes. And then with the green sneakers, he was a first year friend. The child that's sitting on this side by themselves, they like to kind of play by the rules and make sure everyone gets a turn and just kind of share. He doesn't can be the leader or the follower equally. And the guy over there with the stripes and the white shirt always likes to be the leader. So it was kind of the way that they figured out how to have equal turns when one child wants to be the one to throw the ball every time. Does that make sense? Did you see how he was like, you know what, I want to play with you, and got up to leave, and he was like, no, wait, okay, you can have a turn too. And then they all played together. But I mean, this was towards the end of the year when we had worked on, and those two were second year. So we had worked on everyone taking an equal turn for a good 2 years now, right? But with their tools, they were able to work it out. But also they didn't come to the teacher, right? They didn't say, hey, they won't give you a turn, because guy number one over here with the Phillies jersey knows we're going to say, well, you can play with someone else, or you can use your words and let them know you really want to try. And that works for our classroom because, Leo over here with the white and blue stripes knows that if he sees Sam coming to the teacher's going to remind him that he can say, hey, I need a turn too. So that's probably why he was like, no, okay. You can. So this is an example of how it can work. And once again, at school is going to be different from at the playground. But it can work at home with siblings, and you can be rest assured that your children are learning good social behavior here at Greentown. That they can take out into the world as adults. They're learning to be good community members, basically, at an early age here.
And because they have had previous years of learning all these skills, this video is also great in that there's no adult intervening. They solved their problem independently. And I think that's such a big thing to note is that oftentimes when there's conflict, I think we as adults are very quick to want to jump in and fix it for them, but you're taking away the opportunity for them to learn how to solve that problem on their own. So as long as no one is getting hurt physically, allow that to kind of play out and see are they going to resolve it on their own. If they're having some trouble, then of course step in, model, help them, guide them with the language to use. But I think that was also a big thing to note here is there's not a teacher jumping in to navigate that for them.
Yeah, take some practice.
There we go. So having discussed all these different types of play, this is a nice kind of overview photo of all of these things happening simultaneously. So just a few things to note. The child who is unoccupied, in the Montessori classrooms, I feel like this is often our wandering child. They're not interested in anything. They want to observe other children working, or maybe they're kind of eavesdropping on a lesson that's happening, but they're not really engaged in anything at that point in time. And then for the child who is playing solitary, maybe he or she does not have the social skills to play with others yet, or that day they just prefer to play alone. But I think it's important to note that these things happen simultaneously, not just at, within those age ranges that we were talking about.
Yeah, and I find it's important to give that first year friend in the primary room the opportunity to do that. To kind of walk around and observe and maybe look unoccupied, because most of the time they are not. I mean, they're learning through watching other lessons, and they're learning social behavior just by watching. If I find in my experience, if I try and pressure that child to choose work too early, they're gonna have a bad taste in their mouth for whatever it is I'm showing them to do. Because at that moment, they have this need to kind of just get the lay of the land and feel comfortable first, and then it's gonna be so much easier to learn that concept a little bit down the line, you know, because that emotional development's gonna come first, no matter what. You know, it's gonna come before the physical in the classroom, before the academic, probably before the social too. You have to just kind of feel safe emotionally, and confident that, you know, in this space you can be successful at whatever the teacher's inviting you to before it works. So, and that was in my training. You know, my trainer told me a story about a guy that just kind of walked around and observed for the first year, and his parents weren't happy about it. But that second year, he was a star of the show. You know, he just needed to just feel comfortable. You know, and who knows what was going on in his mind, but, you know, follow the child, right? That's kind of what we mean by follow the child. Because we want to, overall, we want to give your child a love for learning. That's number one, right? I was in college, I didn't like reading, I didn't like studying, but I'm hoping that these children getting this Montessori experience, this this first experience in school is going to set up a love for learning for later, you know? It's not necessarily important that they're not doing, you know, the number rods in their first year of primary, but if they're loving school and they're comfortable learning, I think that is first and foremost, you know.
So we put together some ideas of activities for infants and toddlers, and then Jen will share for the older children. For the young ones, these are ways to support your child as they're developing their language, fine and gross motor skills, social, emotional, and cognitive abilities. So I mentioned this already. Observe first, always. This is when your child is working to build concentration and independence that is needed later on for multi-step activities, that's needed so that you can step away and get something done, and sets them up for when they start to engage with other children as well. It also helps you, the adult, start to notice changing interests or activities that your child has maybe already mastered, so that you can provide that next thing that's going to challenge them. Or if you are a home that tries to rotate toys and activities, you can start to see what needs to be switched out. Consider offering toys that are more open-ended. In active toys, something that beeps and makes noise and flashes is going to make for a more passive child. That child is being entertained by the toy. Versus an active child with a more passive toy. They're going to be more engaged in building, using their imagination and creativity with that toy. Of course, everything in moderation. That's not to say that you can't have the flashy, beepy things, or minimal screen time. Just being very conscientious of how often they are using those toys or screen time and things like that. And then, thank goodness for the warmer weather. We can all get back outdoors. And there's lots to do around here. So you do nature scavenger hunts, going on hikes together where they're exploring different things to climb over, walk over, exploring different parks and playgrounds together. And then I used to co-teach with Dom in the ADM classroom, and in our spring conferences, we would always suggest to start having play dates with children, and it tended to be children who were closer to age 3, because that's when they're really starting to begin to notice other children that are like them, and wanting to be a little bit more social. And so that's something to consider as well. Feel free to reach out to your child's teacher. Who are they gravitating to in the classroom the most? And then that's usually the person that you'd reach out to have that play date. And then I know some classrooms will, it's like a classroom parent that will organize classroom activities on the weekends, and those are always great to kind of see those different dynamics and interactions with the children in the classroom, but outside of the school setting as well.
So there's lots of things that would be wonderful activities at home that would help your child in the same way we try to at school. These are some. But in listening to Olivia just now, I wanted to mention that remember, in the Montessori classroom, independence is key, right? So if your child is lacking in opportunities to be independent at home, there's going to be it's going to be a big transition into the classroom, right? If they need their teacher, if your child needs the teacher to kind of guide them through their work and play, there's going to be a lot of redirection by the teacher, like, can you choose on your own? You know, because what one of those lessons that I've given you already can you choose now on your own and practice? Because that's the goal, right? The independence. There's also going to be the time where the teacher asks the kindergarten friend to be with them. So they're going to learn that their work and their play doesn't have to be guided by an adult. That's the goal. So with that said, I was thinking, the children's choice, when I don't guide them in the classroom, they go right to the art shop. They grab the paper, they grab the pencils, they grab the scissors, they grab the construction paper, and they grab the tape. I let them take the tape, they have those little staplers, and they just make stuff, right? And I sometimes think that's what this new makerspace is about. Like, I don't really know what it's about, but I'm thinking it's probably like a wall of arts and crafts materials, and you're like, go make something. So if you could even set up a small shelf at home of that type of thing, like a tray with scissors on it, some paper, or some colored pencils in a little cup, it doesn't have to be much. That would be a great start at independence at home. You know, if you're cooking dinner and you need your child to be working on something else, it's a great way for them to bring it into the kitchen and work on it while you're doing your thing. If they're not into helping you there in the kitchen right at that moment. But an easy way for them to do non-guided work in your home that they would enjoy. And I see a lot of concentration there as well. I have many children that would draw all day if I let them. And they are, it sparks imagination. Olivia and I were talking about how sometimes too much guided play and work can lead to not practicing being imaginative. You know, she was doing a lesson with kindergarteners, and let's write like a fantasy story.
Like just creative story.
Creative story. And they weren't able to think creatively to, without her help.
Like it's okay for children to be bored. I think sometimes we are quick to entertain and keep them busy, but when I think about like my childhood, like it was me by myself or with my siblings, and that's not to say my parents didn't play with us, but it wasn't as frequent as I think parenting nowadays is, and there is beauty in being bored and coming up with whatever it is. And so don't feel like you need to constantly be that entertainer for the child either. But like Jen said, having things accessible where they can go and get those things too. And then realizing now these are mostly toddler families, so this is things that you're modeling now and setting them up so that when they are closer to that primary age, they are able to be independent. When they're bored, they know what they can go and do because you've built that foundation for them. And then taking risks safely, or the risky play. This is something that came up when we had this discussion last school year. Children are natural explorers. They want to test their environment, and through this, they're determining what they're comfortable with. So we want to be mindful that we are not imparting our own fears as they are learning their limits. So the statement of be careful is very abstract for a child who is in most cases trying something for the first time. So they don't even know, how do I be careful? I haven't even tried this. Like they just don't have that understanding yet. And as they practice and master these skills, they're going to want to challenge themselves physically so that they learn their limits and their boundaries. So instead of the be careful statement, consider this an opportunity to help your child foster a greater awareness for their bodies and for their environment they're playing in. So some things that you can say instead are objective statements, pointing out the things around them. Notice how this log is rotten. That is going to be weak and you can even use your foot. Like if you step too hard, it's going to, break or bend. Notice these rocks are slippery. You can give action words. Try moving your feet slowly, quickly, with the little ones too, and even some of the older children enjoy pretending to be an animal. So can you hop across like a kangaroo? Can you move like as quiet as a mouse or as slow as a turtle? And when you relate that to animals, which children love, I think that's an easier connection than just be careful. You can even have fun with different body parts. Try using your hands, try using your arms, your legs, your feet, whatever, as they're climbing something. I will note with climbing, a good rule of thumb and what we do here at Greentown is when a child is on the playground equipment, the adult is never doing for the child something that they cannot do on their own. So that's to say, if a toddler really wants to climb up the climbing wall section of the playground, if they cannot climb up on their own, we are guiding them to a different way to climb up. So the play deck has steps, there's like a pole climber, a wall climber, so there's various ways to get up. So it's not like they can't use the playground equipment, but if they cannot independently do it, we redirect them. We're not picking them up and putting them on top. So that's something to consider when you're out at different playgrounds. And it's another way for them to have that independent practice as well. And then lastly, with pointing out the environment and things around them, always bring it back to their senses. Can you hear the rushing water if you're on a hike? Can you hear the wind or the singing birds? Do you feel the heat from the fire? So that's even like when they're at home and they're trying to touch something. Oh, that's hot. You can get close, you can feel the heat, and that hurts. Or do you feel stable on that rock that you're climbing or wherever they're playing? This is very similar to how we introduce new materials in the classroom. It always starts with the teacher and the child. The teacher goes first and presenting what it is, showing them what it is, and then we say, oh, now it's your turn, but we're still right there with them as they're doing it. And so something to think about, because this is just like when you're teaching any other skill, at what point do you allow for that independent practice to happen? Because at some point, the goal is that we can start backing up and watching them kind of play out all the things that we've taught them. So it's and I think that's where a lot of our personal anxieties come into play. Like we want them to be independent, but then that's also very scary because what if they fall? What if they get hurt? And they're going to, and that's the whole part of the learning process. And that's not to say that you're not supervising your child either. You're right there that if something does go awry, you can step in and navigate those moments with another child that's on the playground or your own child climbing too high, maybe.
I was going to give an example of that.
Yeah.
So I had a child 1 year, and I noticed that they would not play when we went out to the play deck. And I thought, okay, they're young, first year friend. And they would just sit kind of at the table while everyone else is playing, like the little picnic table, and didn't venture out. And normally when a child does that, I let them, but every now and again I'll go get another friend and say, ask them to play, something. And every time I did that and a child came over and said, play with us, I'm like, no. And then I started to inquire, and they were afraid of being bumped, right? That they didn't want to play, they were afraid of being bumped. And I'm thinking, okay. And then we had the spring picnic, and I noticed the mom really didn't let her run around with all the other children in the grass. And then when she saw her at one point on a tree, like a small tree, she ran over and said, come over here, that's dangerous. So I thought to myself, okay, this is why she's not feeling safe to play with her friends on the play deck. So risky opportunities to adventure out on your own, even if you know, accidents happen, I think is a good thing, you know, because we're not always there to protect our child, and if they're at school and they don't have that adult to protect their every move, they're missing out on that social opportunity, which is also equally important, I think, you know.
I guess some just closing remarks, and then we have some resources to share, and then maybe we'll have time for a few questions. At the end of the day, we want our children to trust their instincts rather than constantly relying on adults to tell them what is safe or what is dangerous. In Montessori, we say freedom within limits. You are free to make choices. They're given those opportunities to practice all of those things, as long as they are being safe and respectful. Play works in much of the same way. What is that?
I think it's music classes.
And following up with that, if a child is still not listening to the cues that we've given them, or is approaching something dangerously, repeatedly and not listening, it's time for you to redirect them to a different activity or removing them from that situation entirely. You are allowed to say no to your child, and remove them from something that, and you know, you can always try again later, and that's what we tell the children. You know, it's time to move on to something else. We can try this again later. It's, and following through with that. Yes. So we have some outdoor photos from Greentown. Just to show, this is like a little spinner that sometimes they want an adult to push them or another child is pushing them. If they go too fast, you'll hear stop, stop. So they're learning that communication with each other as well. These two photos are the current play deck. So you can see there's different ways to climb up onto the playground equipment. Often tag is happening in primary, I feel like. Just in toddler, I feel like they're just running in laps. It's not organized tag necessarily, they just want to run. The middle picture are two toddlers. They're both using the phone, but they're not doing the phone together. You can see they have their own agenda, so to speak. Whereas in primary, you might see they both have a phone and they're having a conversation with each other. That would be the older version. And then last one here is primary children climbing up on the climbing dome. I think it's really fun to see the whole progression. This little girl was in my toddler class and never climbed the dome. She would crawl into the middle of it and like watch everyone else climbing. So this picture is really great to see. Like, oh, she's in primary and she started, you know, following the older ones, getting a little bit more sturdy in her body to practice that climbing. So it's fun to see the whole big picture. Do you mind clicking on the links? I just want to briefly share these resources, and this will be made available when the recording is uploaded. So the first one we have is a gross motor development chart, which, judging by the families here, is perfect for this age group. It does go to age 6, I believe, but you'll notice there are age ranges, and then in the middle it gives gross motor developmental milestones. And then in the event that they may not be meeting what those milestones, then possible implications of those not being achieved. So this website is a great resource for child development. And then the other one, the other link is also development-based, but it gives specific games and activities based on the age of your child. And I believe this one also goes to age 6 as well. This website is great for ideas of what to do with your child based on their age. If you, that's fine. Well, as I say, if you scroll down, they could just get an idea. Granted, this is like for the real little ones, but you can look up your child's age and it'll break down different activities and things that you can do together. And then the last resource is 1,000 hours outside. Just a fun statistic. The average American child will spend 1,200 hours a year in front of screens. So this came about from a mom who wanted to balance time outdoors with screen time, because screen time is inevitable nowadays, but it's finding that balance and moderation. So this website is also great. She has a whole bunch of different trackers that you can do together as a family to log your outdoor hours. There's no bad weather, just bad clothing, so getting outside as much as possible. And feel free to explore her website. She has a lot of great ideas for getting outside as well. So. And then, if anyone has any questions, I think we don't know what time it is. A little bit of time for questions.
We would totally talk to Ivy.
Yes.
It's a quick one, but when do the babies start to recognize themselves in the mirror?
It's definitely a range, because I think it all depends on the opportunities that you're giving them to be able to see and recognize themselves. It was interesting, I had a mom in my infant play group. Her daughter was one of the ones standing at the mirror, and I think she's about 9 months, and she was just so like, I have a friend in the mirror. I don't think she realized it was her. I've seen it happen in younger children. I think it really just depends how much time they have in the mirror. Because the mirror is, they see themselves, but then they also start to notice, like, oh, my environment is also what I'm seeing in the mirror. I felt bad for the mom. She's like, I've never thought to just plop her in front of like a big mirror. So something to consider is just having mirrors available during tummy time, and then you can point out like, oh, nose, no, like point to the reflection and then point and touch your child's nose, and they can start to make those connections. When they start like giggling and like wanting to interact, or they start kissing the mirror, I think that's when that connection is made of like, oh, that's me. So I can't give a definitive age, but
Yeah, it's always different.
it's always different, and it really just depends on those opportunities they have to be
And
able
when
to
they
explore.
are interacting with it like that, that's a sign that they're recognizing themselves.
Yeah, they start to realize, oh, like when I smile, that baby's smiling, and they start to make those connections. And then if you're in the mirror with them, you'll notice they'll look at the mirror, like they'll look at you in the mirror, and then they'll turn their head to look at you. And that's when they start noticing, like, oh, like, that's us in the mirror. So it's really fun to see that happen. Oh, sorry, two. Go ahead.
I was wondering what some of the phrases the teachers use when you were talking about, like, for example, taking a turn. Because, like, we go to the playground and she doesn't get that. It's, someone else is using this, but if I could use the same phrases you use in the classroom, maybe she hears it 5 days a week, and like she would, she would understand. Would the teachers maybe be able to say, when it's not her turn, this is what we say for these moments?
In toddler, we often say, and you're not going to necessarily know the other child's name in playground settings, but, oh, so-and-so is using this. Let's go find something else, and guiding her to do something else. It's a little bit harder with toddlers because they get very fixated on, I want to do that right now. So depending on the age of the other child, modeling like, oh, like, taking turn, like, can we play together? And you're there to model, like, oh, can you throw the ball to me? And then I can throw the ball back, and showing how they can. It's hard for the young child, like age 2, because everything is theirs. So sharing is not necessarily developmentally appropriate, and it doesn't mean that they're bad and they're never going to learn how to share. It's just they're not there yet developmentally. So a lot of it is adults modeling for them, and hopefully it's in a setting where there's another activity available that they can do. Oh, and then when they're done, we can go back and use them.
It's his turn. When he's not done, it's your turn. Then it's your turn. Okay. So it's like definitely gonna happen at some point.
And I think it's harder for families to hold the boundary than the teachers because it's your child and they're gonna get upset and no one likes to see their child upset. And it's not to say that we like to see them upset here either, but I think it's just easier to hold that boundary because they're not our own. But that consistency piece is so beneficial because they're testing the boundaries for you too. So is mom always gonna tell me this, or is there gonna be a time where I can get away with it, so to speak? So if it's the first time she's hearing you use the same language as her teachers, there might be a little bit more of that pushback. But when she starts to realize, oh, like, mom says this, my teachers say this is just the way it is, so to speak, she starts to learn those boundaries as well, those limitations.
Is your child a toddler?
Yes.
But for the most part, you're lucky because our toddlers are usually easily redirected. You show them something better, right?
Distract. That's what we do in toddler all day. Distract.
This is better. Come on here.
Look how much fun we're having.
I think unavailable is a common phrase too, like, or that this isn't available or it's unavailable. I believe in toddler as well, they probably use that. I know
Sure, I hear it all the time.
You hear it all the
Yeah.
time, yeah?
Okay.
It's not available.
Using
So this
something
time
that's
is
more
not available.
concrete for
Like
them.
the playground can be tough, cause she likes
Yeah.
the swing and just the swing.
Right.
And just the fact that, they're not enough, it's not
It's
your
unavailable.
child. So I
And that's
have
the same thing with snack and toddler, because I would say at this point, all the toddler classrooms, there's a certain number of children that can sit at a table for snack. So we will often say, oh, I know you want snack right now, it's not available. Look, these friends are sitting here, we have to wait. So it's something more concrete than taking turns. She has no idea what that means right now. Taking turns is a lost concept on a toddler. So something more concrete of, it's not available right now, we have to wait.
And I love that term when a child comes up to me and says, can I use the bathroom or can I have snack now? Well, you can make that decision. Is it available? And so it's a powerful word. Available, not available.
And that's great too, like, this is what, like, we're telling them at toddler, and then they move into primary where the teacher puts it back on them to notice that, so it's a nice progression. And I know you had a question.
Yeah, I actually have two playground related questions. One is, if your child runs into a playground bully who pushes him, and like, how do you use that as an educational opportunity for a child? What do you say to them in front of the other child and the parents? And the second question is related, but I guess the opposite, is if your child just started to play with something, a mother, the child comes out and the mother's like, and she takes her turn, right, like, and then like
It's not available.
the child doesn't say anything, and my child doesn't say anything, just looks at me. Like, you don't want to seem like the person who doesn't want to share, but also you want to make sure your child gets to speak up
And that's kind of your teachable moment
yeah.
of like what we're saying right now of, giving them the opportunity to practice and play. They don't want to play with someone else right now, but we'd love to give it to you when we're done. I think we've given this example in a previous talk before of, for adults, of if you are at work and you're working on something, some things you're going to do collaboratively, sometimes you're just working independently. If someone came over and took your computer or your pen out of your hand without saying anything prior, you'd be a little like caught off guard. So like, oh, I was using that. And I think that's the same thing for children, of protecting the work of the child, and the work in this case is their play. And so I think that's something to share with the family too, of like, oh, they're using it right now, but when we're done, you can have a turn. And depending on the parent, that might not be well received, but at the end of the day, it's your child that you're standing up for. So.
Would you ask your child if they're
Or
available, or if they're ready to be finished with it, or?
Yeah.
would that
Yeah,
make
you can
sense?
always ask too if you feel like your child is at the age where they can communicate those feelings. That's also totally fine as well. And they might be ready, like, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes she's comfortable with familiar people,
Mhm.
but if strangers just come up and she might not feel comfortable enough to say no, or you just like looks at me, how should I react?
Right. And your question about bullying, I think in those situations, it's a lot of the adult giving the language for what happened. I'm so sorry that person pushed or hit or whatever the action was. That must have scared you, startled you. I think it's really hard in those situations because I feel like it depends so much on like the other parent, how old the other child is. But I think navigating it with like giving that language back and forth, I hesitate like forcing apologies because that's another one of those abstract concepts for children as well. Does anyone wanna?
I mean, I would say the same. I think it's important to redirect, direct the child to their own, how that felt, because it gives them the language to understand what it felt like, and then the other person involved hears it as well. And that's really the most empowering part of that learning is to, oh, I didn't like that. Tell them you didn't like that, and don't touch my body. But I agree about the forced apologies.
Yeah.
It's the same, apologies and sharing, it's a pressure for parents on the playground. Like you said, you don't want to be the parent that's not sharing, but we get wrapped up in our social dynamics, and it's not about us in those moments.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.